Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a very special and spooky late night Wandering Scribe book impressions episode here on the channel. Now, in honor of the spooky season of the year, what better story than Bloodborn by Stephanie Kemler? As the descendant of a centuries old cult, Mina Coffin was never promised an ordinary life. The only things that kept her alive were drinking from open veins and keeping secrets. But truth drips from her lips like blood, and trust is a dangerous thing. Will falling in love with the man with killer instincts, being hunted by an ex-girlfriend with fangs, and a perilous accident threaten the peaceful life she built after years of turmoil? It will take a fight with her inner demons and the sacrifice of the ones who love her most to learn how strong she really is. Mina's journey is long and gory, but it is worth it, even if she needs a few daggers and much blood to find out. Sink your teeth into this fresh and exciting twist on vampire lore from the incredible novelist Stephanie Kemler. Everything you thought you knew about dark creatures of the night fades to black, as this novel possesses a very new question to vampire lovers everywhere. Which would you be, Bloodborn or Bloodmad? And with that, let's dive right in. The village. Centuries ago. The world is ghastly. It is the clouded alone. We are bereft. We need provisioning. We are outnumbered. The voice of our enemies is deafening. The swirling storm rises about us. Even in stillness, we can feel them when it's quiet and the world is asleep. Oh, to shout, open wide the gates, at our murderers. What bravery is that? What clarity and insistence! We must wait in patient affliction, for the days all seals will be broken. The blood seal on the door of our village, the only salvation in the days of impending doom. But hark! We are now so consumed, the Bloodmad at the door. High in the Carpathian mountains, an elderly monk penned these final words and looked up from a crouch and cramped position. He was in the deepest corner of the village church, where they had lived under siege for 3 months now. The scratching on the door had stopped. The rattling of the locks had gone silent. This monk, their patriarch now, marked his place in his journals, while waiting to see if the quiet outside was truly quiet and they were saved. He paged through the past 3 months. How did it happen so quickly? How had they descended in such a state? It had been a staggering sadness that struck like high lightning on the darkened peaks surrounding them. They would not forget, would never forget, could never forget the day the first of their village turned to bloodlust and murder in those terrifying plague days. The day the first fangs appeared. The days to follow when the choice was made by so many of their own to revel in the chaos, the unrestrained freedom of liquid strength, no longer bound to rules and strictures. Their former brethren liberated and free to roam the earth looking for fresh prey and reveling in ecstatic, genetic terror. Eyes met each other across the bodies, still held and afraid, even though the months between had taught the gathered so much about the new world around them. The sight of dried and bloody tears that had once run down cheeks, and the dirty swipes of dark red that continued to stain mouths and earlobes and dribble down necks, was still jarring. They had learned to live by the rules and knew what it meant to break them. Drink given blood, still and waiting in a bowl was survival. It kept the convulsions and hemorrhaging away, taken directly from the flowing streams of veins and arteries, and the turn happened within days. Then it was stay and be staked, or emerge into the sunlight to find new companionship in the madness beyond the doors. Among the villagers no mouth opened, no gasping breath released, just an unspoken sliver of hope growing like a waxing moon. Were they saved? Were they finally free? These questions lingered like the black vultures outside, picking at the skulls of the slain cast out by both Bloodborn and Bloodmad alike, for that is how they began to refer to one another. Bloodborn in the walls, Bloodmad without. Father Demetrius, the very first of the name and the scribe of their entrapped days, stretched his long legs, smoothed his grizzled gray and black beard with his calloused hand, and peeked through a seam in the side of their wooden prison. He heard no noise, saw no movement, and smelled decay, but not the bitter metal of freshly spilled blood. Two of his most trusted fellow monks, the only ones left, carefully creaked opened the doors and walked into the sunshine, blinking with watering eyes. From those first steps, many more accompanied until the entire couture of Bloodborn were again in the light after such a time. And that was the day they would forever call Salvation Day, memorialized for an age to come. They began to repair their frantically discarded lives. With patience and gratitude, the Bloodborn would find solace in the new faith formed from the bones of the old. They would marry together, raise families together, and stay within the closed bounds of tradition as well as they could for as long as they could. Father Demetrius and those monks who followed would determine it so. And many years later it took an Irish writer named Stoker, with a curious mind and an active imagination, to pen the first of the tales of the whispered about village where bloodlust once ruled. Legend upon legend added to their mythos, the mortal now immortal, the private and driven underground now afraid of their own reflections, and the villagers, terrified to open their doors now, required invitations to enter the dwellings of the living. Later still, it took an intrepid Gothic literature scholar called Coffin to meet one of the bloodborn in the village square, entertain a passionate love, and be sealed to her forevermore. In time one of their poor banished children of Eve would turn and become a bloodmad at the door, doomed and afraid, and trying desperately to return to her beloved and familiar bloodborn home. Chapter 1. Nevada, present day. The road was a bad place for a girl like Mina Coffin, but it was the best her brothers could do. Settled and protected by the one brother who knew her better than any other, he was the guardian of her nightmares now. And on the dry day in June, when a quiet sound engineer named Martin Shelley met her in Vegas, he did not realize the deadly trap of his affections could snap shut at any moment, cursing him as she was cursed. But awareness came nearly months later, after many shocks and heartbreaks, for now it was just another day on tour, another show in another city, another hollow castle of an empty venue, the dead undead and their endless sound checks and perfectionism. Marston began his curse tale by asking aloud, "Who's the girl?" to the band, as they were unfurling long audio cables, endlessly plugging and unplugging into pedal boards, turning knobs, tuning strings. Far across the stage sat tiny dark-haired Mina, perched on a road case, swinging her legs and gently kicking the box with black and white checked skate shoes, singularly focused on a large tablet where her stylus was carefully sketching loops and lines and cross hatches. She was biting the bottom of her lip in concentration. "Oh, that's Eb's sister. Have at it," Noah muttered with eyes wide. He was winding some cables around his arm and unwinding other ones, never happy with the length or the use or even the color. Parker sat on the edge of the stage tuning his bass guitar. Low quiet sounds sounded tighter and brighter as he worked. He peeked in. "She's pretty." He paused to draw a circle next to his temple with his finger. "They're just being assholes. Mina's great, but yeah, she's got a lot going on. I just asked, hey, Eb." James waved Eb toward Marston. "Marston wants to know about your sister." His bandmates laughed and went back to work with James, taking extra time adjusting the height of his mic stand. Eb scowled as he often did. He was a tightly wound clock that day with short black hair, a lowered brow, and brown eyes darkening to ink. "What do you want to know?" "Her name's Mina, and she's sitting over there." Marston gently flipped a small paperback between his hands. The spine cracked, pages soft and dog-eared from the years. "I think I found her book," he said as he held it out so Eb could see the cover. With a quick glance and the shake of his head, Eb muttered, "That damned infernal book." He sighed and said more clearly, "Go introduce yourself. She usually doesn't bite." Marston gave a quiet laugh. Eb didn't. Instead, he twirled his drumsticks in the air and started playing on an empty crate while Marston made his way over. Under unlit stage lights, over crisscrossing wires, and in between boxes, Mina was absorbed in carefully shading in each fold in the cloak of a determined and imposing raven-haired heroine. The vampire queen had the enveloping fabric wrapped tightly around her shoulders, and looked off at an approaching storm while a small goblin with a grimace pulled her at the helm. It was all moody colors, dark skies, and shadows, and it was one of Mina's favorites. In the shadow of the scattered lights, flickering on and off, and warming up, Mina heard footsteps making their way from the stage door toward her. She was aware of slight movement in front of her in the shadow of two shoes. With continuous focus, she stilled her hand for a moment and clutched the stylus with knuckles white as bone. "Eb said this is yours." It was on the steps of the bus. "It looked like something you might miss," Marston said in his quiet way. Mina sighed, let herself breathe, and glanced up, but barely. From under her eyelashes, dark and lush like moths at twilight, her focus settled on the serious young man she had noticed from the moment she flew into Salt Lake City to join her brother on the Undead Dead tour. Their sound engineer wasn't the stalking, unholy creature she had braced herself to meet. Instead, he looked open, honest, with light hazel eyes and dark blonde hair, and a hint of a question permanently behind his shy smile. "Thank you." Mina nodded and smiled. "Can you hold on to it for just a second? I'm almost done with this part." The cross-hatching and color layering continued. "Sure." Marston cradled the book reverently in his hands and tried to spy the tablet screen from the corner of his eyes. "What are you working on? Anything interesting?" "I am. Hop up." Mina moved to the edge of the box. Marston climbed next to her, shoulder to shoulder. She kept shading and filling in the cloak. "It's this story, Vampire Queen and the Five Goblins, and I just started on it." Marston was almost afraid to get too close because he didn't want to bump her hand or otherwise mar her drawing. It was very detailed and rather impressive. "You write graphic novels?" "No, just illustrate them. It's pretty fun, and I'm always looking for something to keep myself out of Niecy's ways while he's working." She grinned as she snapped the stylus away in its case, tucked her long hair behind her ears, and turned towards Marston. He felt different to her, this close, not reserved and inquisitive, just warm and gentle and human. "Thank you again. It's my favorite book. I would have been really sad to lose it." He returned it, and their hands made contact for just long enough to reinforce to Mina he was indeed warm, and most likely harmless. The light heft of a book reminded her of every reason she loved it. Is it any good? I've never heard of it. Marston put his knee up on the dark road case and turned slightly to face her. Mina looked down at the book with an embarrassed grin. There's some book I've been reading every couple of months since I was 13. I have like 2 or 3 books I bring with me wherever I go. I read them over and over. Funny, I do the same. What's this one about? He craned his neck over slightly. It's called Charlotte Sometimes. It's about a girl who goes back and forth in time at a boarding school in England. He's always afraid she'll get stuck in the past. It's really hard to put down. Anyway, like a kid's book. Mina shrugged and hugged the book tightly before stacking it on top of her tablet. Charlotte sometimes meant something to Mina. Meant everything, really. Knowing fellowship with Charlotte Makepeace was a defining feature of her adolescence. They were both alone and cursed by time, afraid to be imprisoned in the wrong identity. The summer she turned 14, she found it laying on her desk in the house with the steeply pitched roof and the dormer windows. A small note was tucked inside it in a sharp scrawl. Every girl your age needs an escape sometimes. Let this book be your favorite. Dad. Any time Lev felt shaky and uncertain, she turned those beloved pages and turned down the volume on the things that tormented her in the night. Marston cleared his throat when Mina looked down and became silent. Time travel? Those books are really great. Mina smiled, and her nearly black eyes reflected the stage lights as they began to incandescence one by one. You can borrow it if you want. I can promise you'll like it. My family hates it because I would carry it with me everywhere and ignore them. I kind of tune out when I read too. His smile stretched nearly temple to temple. I'd love to check it out. It was unexpected that the girl he had been observing nearly every moment he wasn't perfecting the settings of his soundboard would be bookish and introspective as he was. Hold on for a second. Marston barged down, headed over to the soundboard, and ducked underneath. He came back with a similarly worn and dog-eared book of his own. Sitting next to Mina again, he handed it to her. Let's swap. This is Vongut's Cat's Cradle. I read it over and over. It's kind of about time travel and a government secret plot and religion. It was a gift from my grandfather. It's pretty strange, but it's almost hard to put down. Mina laughed as she paced through. This is great. Thank you. I like having a road crew lending library. Let's not invite anyone else, okay? Marston's mouth turning up slightly at one end. So, what else is in your collection? Dracula was my dad's favorite. Annotated and analyzed, of course. It had almost hard to read the pages. I carry that with me always. She flipped through the pages of Cat's Cradle quickly, like she was gently shuffling a deck of cards. Oh yeah, your name. That makes sense. He must be a fan. He was. He passed away a few years ago. She smoothed her hand over the covering, feeling all the times Marston's fingertips must have held it over the years. He was a Gothic literature professor, and he gave my brothers and I ridiculous names to prove it. Oh? What's Eb short for? Ebenezer. I couldn't say when I was little, so I always called him Neasy. Nobody else gets to call him that, so pretend I didn't tell you. She said the last bit in almost a whisper as Eb walked past to adjust his drum kit for the 3rd time this afternoon. His perfectionism extended to bringing his own sound engineer on the road with them and barely letting roadies touch his equipment. Out of the corner of his vision, he could see that Marston might have the right expertise for the band, but he was the wrong choice for this particular tour. Mina was unguarded and enjoying herself too much for Eb's taste. Is it just you two? With Eb all the way to checking his instrument, it was nearly time for Marston to do a sound check. He hoped he would have more time sitting there with someone he was becoming increasingly fond of as the minutes ticked by. No, four older brothers above us. It was pretty loud in our house growing up. Did a lot of hiding in my room and reading books like this. They never left me alone for very long. Mina looked at Em and rolled her eyes when she saw the disapproval lurking there. What else is in your library? He asked. Noah, Parker, and James walked toward the stage, and Martin and Mina popped off the road case. From behind his drum kit, Ed practiced fills over Mina and Martin's conversations. She gave him a dirty look until he stopped. Sorry, he does that. He's a drummer. They all do. They both laughed. So books. Carmela let the right one in. That's about all I have with me on this tour. Three vampire stories, huh? Marston paused, then asked, have you ever been on tour with them before? He leaned against an amp, out of sight of the rest of the band, stalling for time. Not since they were touring in a van, and I was working their merch table. I'm happy to say I've retired from that. Their fan base can be pretty strange sometimes. That's where I met. Mina stopped suddenly. Lucy was a persistent ugly scar of a thought Mina hoped was dead and buried. Where I met a lot of creeps. She balanced her tablet and cat's cradle onto one arm as she slipped the stylus case in the pocket of her hoodie. Thanks for this. I'll have to ask about your book collection next time. Hey, sound guy, ready for a check in a few minutes? James shouted their way. He was getting closer to doors and closer to Mina, finding a spot backstage to pop in earplugs and finish work. I should probably go. Marsden gave a shy grin. And then Mina noticed his expression change instantly to the professional one she had watched keenly before they spoke today. Me too. Mina turned toward the stage curtains looming in the dense dark sheet above the like the set from an ominous gothic melodrama. She turned slightly. It's not just sound guy, right? It's Marson. Or did I butcher it? Yeah, you said it right. Kind of an old-fashioned name, Marston shrugged. Well, as someone with a very old-fashioned name, I appreciate it. Anyway, see you after the show. Mina finally turned then and disappeared backstage. Like a vapor, her hair bouncing on her shoulders with every satisfying step. Marston pocketed Charlotte sometimes with a light tap of dark denim and shook his head in wonder. It had taken some degree of courage to approach her. He got the impression she was fragile or dangerous, or both from Ebb, who hovered around and slept a bunk below her every night. She had appeared suddenly and confidently, seeming to have a firm grasp of herself. Did a girl her age need such focused attention from an older brother? And he liked Ebb well enough. They had gone along since Marston was managing the sound at the Tinkerbox in Los Angeles, and they met to discuss the Dead Undead tour. And they even talked vaguely of opening a studio where Ebb was finished with what he thought would be their final tour. But Mina reshaped those plans into formless ways, enticing and engaging Marston. He restrained them with the boldness just behind, or rather, just being near her. If he could somehow break the tenacious grasp Ed had on her, Marston might be able to figure out why his heart felt linked so closely to hers, even in such a short time. Mina was like a dark little flame that flickered, beguiling. It was only a matter of time before he would burn. And with that, viewers and listeners, we are going to stop here. This is a very perfect story for the Halloween season. It sets the tone and lets you know about vampires. It really doesn't give you a lot, but just enough of what to expect. You know Ebenezer is this overbearing, well, maybe not overbearing brother, but he definitely has to protect Mina. But why? And Marston, it already gives a hint that he possibly may be a vampire from the last sentence he might burn. Ultimately, this is a perfect story for the Halloween season, and I'll be linking it down below of where you can purchase it, as well as check out Stephanie Kemler's interview here on the channel. And as always, have a wonderful evening, everyone, and I'll see you all in the next episode. Take care and have a good day.